Hi there, welcome. It is Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on EWTN Radio. I am Jerry Usher. Debbie Georgiani is just about to take off in Phoenix. She is headed for Toledo, Ohio for Annunciation Radio's Fall Fun Drive that is going to be going on tomorrow through Friday. We thought Debbie was going to be here today, and then all of a sudden she had booked her flight, and then lo and behold, what do you know, that pesky little time change, which they don't change in Arizona. And so Debbie said, oh, wait a minute, I have to be, my plane's going to be taking off about showtime. So I am with you solo again today, and it is an honor and a blessing and really just a joy to be with the Take Two family. And I really look forward to your participation today, because what we're going to be talking about is something, as you all know, if you've listened to the show for any length of time or if you know me from other contexts, a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. And that is, I want to bring up the issue of spending time in serious discernment for the priesthood or religious life and discerning out. They call it discerning out. That is when you may have been in the seminary or in a convent or a monastery for a while, and then the discernment process through your spiritual director and prayer and talking with family and so many other factors that go into that. You discern that was ultimately not your call. It can be very traumatic in a lot of ways. You may have invested several years like I did. I invested 6 years overall in the formation process for the priesthood. And I have to say, I made one crucial mistake early on. When I joined the Archdiocese of Portland, Oregon as a college seminarian. And because I had no college before that. I was the only college level seminarian. All the others were in pre-theology or theology. And so I was allowed by the Archbishop at the time to go to Franciscan University of Steubenville. 3 of the best, greatest years of my life. I got my degree in 3 years. But what I did is when I sort of first made that step on campus at Franciscan University, I thought, okay, I've found God's will. This is it. If I do anything else with my life, I'm going to be out of God's will. That's not the way it works in discernment. That really isn't the way. And I found out kind of the hard way, because as I was sensing God leading me out of priestly formation over the last year or two that I was in the program, it kept coming back around to that thing like, well, you know what? But no, this is God's will for me. I don't want to be out of God's will. I want to make sure that I do God's will. Thank God for very wise vocation directors and spiritual directors in the seminary and formation directors. See, the church has this right for men and for women. There's a process, sometimes a lengthy process, to determine if your call is to the priesthood or the religious life. And so the church, in her wisdom, allows that length of time to really dive deep in prayer and in human formation and in pastoral formation, intellectual formation, spiritual formation, to find out if that is right. So don't worry, I'm not going to sit here and spend the hour sharing my experience. I want to hear your experience today. If you are a man or a woman who seriously discerned a religious vocation at some time in your life, maybe spent time in the seminary, or as I say, a convent or a monastery, and you later determined through discernment and prayer and talking with those who know what they're talking about regarding those matters, and you determined that was not your vocation, I would like you to call in and let's just talk about this a little bit, because I think a conversation like this is so important. First of all, let me give you the phone number. It's 833, excuse me, got some frog in I have Debbie's frog in my throat this morning. 833-288-3986 is the number. 833-288 EWTN. You can email take2@EWTN.com, post on the show's website, take2show.com. You can text the letters EWTN to 55000. There might be a small data rate there. And I'm also streaming live on YouTube and Facebook today on the video streams there, so you can post your comments there if you would like. 833-288-3986. And the reason, actually, Debbie suggested that I do this topic. She's been fascinated by my journey and the fact that we both know a lot of men and women who at one time were in formation for priesthood or religious life, and for whatever reason discerned out. They call it discerning out. And I feel it's important to have this conversation so that we can all learn a little bit more about the fact that this process is indeed a process. You're not locked into something when you make that that initial yes and sign on the dotted line to go into the convent or start your formation or enter a diocese or an archdiocese or a religious congregation. But I believe it is absolutely imperative. In fact, I believe every human being, man, woman, and child, has what I call an obligation before God to ask the question of God. And that is, God, what did you create me for? We have a moral obligation before God to ask that question. And I think it's important that we instill this idea in our kids, but also without putting pressure on them. See, it's a very free process when you think about it. It's like, God, what am I supposed to do with my life? How much freer could we be than to turn to the creator of the universe who created us out of love and for a very specific purpose and say, dear Almighty Father, what was I made for? What was I made for? So we have that obligation before God to ask the question. And the answer is not always immediately obvious. I'm going to be hosting Catholic Answers Live again today and tomorrow and Thursday. And I hosted yesterday, and Jason Everett was talking about, he's written a book called The Blueprint for Dating. And he was talking about how a young man or a young woman sometimes will be constantly, perpetually discerning, is this the right direction? Is this the right person for me? Is this the right, thing that I'm supposed to do? And he said, you could have a seed in your hand, and you don't know if it's an apple seed or an orange seed. And he said, you could spend the rest of your life trying to determine if that's an apple seed or an orange seed. Now, I don't know if they look alike or not. Maybe they don't. Maybe it's easy to tell. But his analogy was this. He said, the way to really find out what kind of a seed that is, put it in the ground and see what grows and give it that opportunity to grow. And so discernment, it does require deliberation and prayer and a length of time and so forth, but it also involves action, taking action. So did you take that step? Maybe you never even entered a seminary or a monastery or a convent, but you talked with your parish priest or your parents. Maybe you have a son or daughter right now who is seriously discerning a religious vocation. Love to hear from you about this as well. The number is 833-288-3986. Believe me, I could talk this whole hour on this because I love it, and I believe we need to be cultivating vocations around every corner, if I can put it that way. It is that important to the church right now. But I want to hear from anyone who is listening right now who either has or is in serious discernment about a possible priestly vocation or religious vocation. 833-288-3986 is the number to call.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
I come from the other side of the tracks, see? My uncle used to have slot machines. Put one nickel in and it's emptied. And I brought him home in a bag, and my mother looked at me. Where did you get all that money? I said, I won them. You didn't win them. He fixed the machine. I didn't care if he fixed the machine or not,
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Coming up later today on Cresta in the Afternoon.
We live in trying times, and it's easy to become discouraged and believe the enemy's lie that God has abandoned us. Father Timothy Gallagher joins us with a look at how the devil exploits our vulnerabilities and how we can be on the defense and overcome spiritual discouragement. Also, Dr. Thomas Kidd looks at America's religious history and the role of the faith in forming America.
Cresta in the Afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
We need EWTN Radio for the reason that Mother Angelica founded this entire enterprise. She always saw this as a spiritual growth network. It was to be an enterprise in media that reached people in all aspects of their life. She saw this as a holistic approach to reaching the whole person in the middle of the world and bringing them truth and life.
Raymond Arroyo thinks Catholic radio is important. So should you.
Great to have you with us here on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Debbie, who is up and away on her way to Toledo, Ohio for a pledge drive this week at Annunciation Radio. Good reminder that when your Catholic station or EWTN kind of passes the virtual basket around in front of you, typically the stations do it 2 times a year. Please, it's very, very serious right now. We are living in times where we need our Catholic voice on the air, on radio and television more than ever. So please be generous as you can possibly be, and then be maybe even a little bit more generous, a little bit sacrificial if you can. And coming up later today, Open Line Tuesday with Father Wade Menezes. He talks about faith, family, and fellowship, and that show airs at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on most of these same EWTN radio stations. Open Line Tuesday with Father Wade Menezes talks about faith, family, and fellowship. Part of that Open Line strip every weekday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So the topic that Debbie suggested that I put out there for you today is how many people, if anyone listening, has spent time in any sort of serious discernment of a possible religious vocation. And this is, I'd say that could be just about anything beyond just, at one time when you're, 15 years old thinking, wonder if I should be a priest. Nope, guess not. Some people dismiss it that quickly, but no. Have you really taken it to heart, taken it to prayer, and had a conversation with your parents? Maybe that wasn't your vocation in life, but often God will call a man or a woman to spend time in a program of formation in preparation for what else He wants them to do in life. I have heard from so many priests and so many religious men and women who say, the priests will say, I am a much better, or the men who spent time in the seminary, I believe I am a much better father and husband because of the time I spent in the seminary. And the women, a lot of the women will say the same thing, better wives and mothers. I mean, think about this. If it's a healthy, and this is an important point, if it's a healthy formation environment, and we know there have been a lot of unhealthy environments in the church in the last number of decades, and there still remain pockets of that in some places. But if it's a healthy formation environment, it is absolutely impossible that would be that would be wasted time for a young man to spend time among his peers with that like-minded goal, that esprit de corps, learning the faith, learning how to pray, being humanly formed, pastorally formed, and all of this. It can't possibly be wasted time. So moms and dads, keep that in mind. If you have a son or a daughter who is thinking about maybe investigating formation for a possible religious vocation, you don't want to push, but don't hold them back either. Please don't hold them back. Just think about the benefits that could provide for them later on in their lives. So here's the number, 833-288-3986. And if you're a parent today of a son or a daughter who has expressed some interest in a possible religious vocation, call in and share how that process is going, the dynamics of that in your family, because there are a lot of parents out there who kind of are afraid of this. Really, should I give a son or a daughter to priesthood or religious life, especially in today's culture? I'd love to ask. Here's a question for anyone who's listening right now: would you encourage your son to be a priest in today's ecclesiastical climate, with the clergy sex abuse and really the stigma that this has put upon all of our priests, and how our priests, unfortunately, even the good, holy, prayerful ones, are just looked down upon, and if not literally, then figuratively spat upon. When you look at the state of the priesthood today, which I think is getting much, much better and not worse, but it's going to take some more time for us to all realize that. Would you give a son to the priesthood? Would you give a daughter to religious life today? 833-288-3986. So much more I could say, but I want to go to your calls. John is first in Spartanburg, South Carolina, listening on WSEJ 96.7 FM. First-time caller. Hi, John. Good to have you with us.
Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for your call.
Thank you. I just want to share, I had considered becoming a Jesuit in the New England province. I had wonderful Jesuit teachers in high school. I went to Boston College High School, and my wife had considered becoming a Columban nun, and the two of us had discerned. I had gone on retreats and 3-day silent retreat and so forth, but I realized that really wasn't the vocation that God had in mind for me. He gave me a talent in music, which I've used to serve the church now for the better part of 40 years. But my wife and I, when we married, we adopted 6 beautiful children from all over the world. And I really feel that the time that the two of us spent to get closer to the Lord with discernment has helped us with our children to pass on the faith. And we pray and we hope that one of the 6 will have a religious vocation, but that's up to God. But the time that we spent was a good time, and it made us better parents, as you had said, and a closer couple.
Wow, John, beautiful, beautiful story. Thanks for sharing that. And I was curious. You mentioned you developed this musical talent. Was that actually in formation, or did you have that when you went in? When did that come along for you?
I had it all my life, and I grew up in a choir loft. My mother was very active in our local parish, and I actually sang in the choir at St. Ignatius Church right there at Boston College when I was in school. But I've spent most of my life in church music, and I find great joy in that, in helping the liturgy. I'm a firm believer, though, that the Mass is the Mass. You don't need the music. It helps, but the Mass by itself is everything.
Well, and you mentioned the adoption of the 6 kids. God bless you for that, John. And did you mention your wife's name? If you want to, I'd love to honor her as well.
Sure, her name's Mildred. Her name is Mildred.
John and Mildred. You've adopted the 6 kids, John, and you know what that says to me, and I know you're probably a very humble couple, but, when you both presented yourself to the Lord as possibly, potentially giving your entire lives to the service of His people, that shows great generosity of heart. And that, I'm sure, was only magnified and only grew during the time that each of you was, spending that time in formation. And now look what it has produced in your life, John. That generosity of heart has produced a family of now 8, through adoption. I think that's absolutely marvelous. And like you said, I have talked to so many, priests who said, my dad spent time in the seminary, my mom spent time in the convent. So for you and Mildred to want one of your kids to have a religious vocation, I think also shows that generosity of heart. And what do you want to bet, John? I'm just willing to bet right now that's going to happen. Is there an age range you can share with us on the kids right now?
Well, they're all very close in range. I have 3 that are 21, one that's 20, one that's 18, and one that's 16.
Okay.
See, we started off with one adoption. Then we ended up getting a brother and sister who were separated. So we went from 1 to 3 overnight. And then we adopted a family of half-siblings. So we went from 3 to 6 overnight.
Wow. Beautiful, beautiful. I'm going to pray along with you that if it's God's will, one of them, or even more than one of them, has a priestly or religious vocation. John, for me, and I don't want to keep you too long, but the 6 years that I spent in formation were some of the most joyful and fruitful of my life. If you could say what was, maybe the one key thing that you came away with, maybe you've already mentioned it, I don't know, but the one key thing that instilled in you for the rest of your life, what would you say that was?
That'd be a very hard question.
Yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot, John. That's fine. I think
I guess it was a peace, an understanding. I desired, the vocation, and then I realized that it wasn't for me, and there was a peace about that, and I knew that God had another calling for me, and I think that I've tried to fulfill it in my life. But I do believe that the priesthood, if it's God's will, it's the greatest thing in the world, because only a priest can bring Jesus Christ to the people of God through the Holy Eucharist. That's
right. Among so many other beautiful things, we must pray for our good priests and uphold them, and pray for the wayward priests as well, because in my study of holy orders, and I'm sure you know this well too, John, that God holds the men and the women, especially men who become priests, to a the bar is very, very high for them. And if you or I commit a certain sin, it's like we skin our knee. But if a priest commits the same sin, it could be like him falling from a 10-story building. It could be fatal. And those are the words of the saints, not me. So
yes. Yes, absolutely. No, our priests and all of our religious need our prayers every single day. This is a tough time, but in tough times, God's grace is abundant. And I am with you when you say that things are turning a corner. Mm-hmm. I think that we're going to see beautiful fruit in the next couple of years. We have to wait for it, we have to wait patiently, and we have to pray hard for vocations.
Amen, John. Well, thank you for your great witness, you and Mildred, and your beautiful family. Blessings on all of you, and may each one of your kids find that perfect, holy, beautiful, fulfilling, peace-filled will of God in their lives. Thank you, John. Appreciate your call.
Thank you for your kindness. God bless you, and to you and everyone in EWTN. As we come close to Thanksgiving, may you have a million reasons to be grateful.
Thank you. I think we all do, John. Thank you very much for your call. Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, inviting you to call in today if you spent time seriously discerning the priesthood or religious life, discerned it was not God's will for your life. If you're comfortable sharing why you left, that's fine. If not, you can just simply say, I had a great time. It wasn't for me. I've moved on. Maybe you've gotten married. Maybe you're raising a family like John and Mildred right now. Both of them, each of them spent time in formation for a possible religious vocation. And Eric, hold on in Wichita. I'm going to get to you. But one thing that John mentioned there was the peace. And I have to say, too, I mentioned early in the show that when I first entered formation, I sort of intellectually or in my heart, in my mind or in my heart, locked myself into that vocation. And I thought, if I do anything else, it's going to be, in a sense, a violation of God's will. I was really rough on myself. Maybe I had a felt obligation just from whatever experiences I had had in life. Maybe I had a felt obligation, like that's what I had to do with my life to please God or earn His love. I don't know. I'm just speculating here. These things I've had a lot of years to think and pray about. But I will tell you that peace of mind of having made that step, having done that discernment, having realized that was not where God was calling me, it does provide a sense of peace. I know several men and probably several women as well who regret not spending at least a little bit of time in the seminary or a convent or something because they had that pull on their heart and they just felt like, well, no, maybe that's not for me or I just don't want to do that or whatever. And this is not a judgment or anything. It's just that I think that peace can come, and this is with regard to any vocation in life, anything that God might be calling us to. So here's the number, 833-288-3986. I also invite parents to call in if you have a son or daughter in formation right now. How are you feeling about that? How is that going? If you had a son or daughter who was in formation and did not remain in that program for whatever reason, 833-288-3986 is the number. Eric is in Wichita, as promised, up next, listening here on Catholic Radio Network, and another first-time caller. Hi, Eric. Welcome. Can we get over to Eric, please? Oh, Eric is now. Okay. He's still being screened. My apologies for that. So, Eric, we will get to you in just a minute, but we do have a couple of open phone lines here. 833-288-3986, and then again, the other question that I was putting out there, and you can call in anything you might want to discuss regarding vocations, priestly or religious vocations, but. As you look around right now, the news sometimes is so very, very bad. And let's face it, the secular media, they're no friends of the church, okay? So if only one priest, only one in the entire world, in the history of the Catholic Church, had been guilty of sexual abuse, yes, that would be one too many. But the media would still make that out to be, they'd make a mountain out of a molehill. And I'm not downplaying the horrific things that have been done, the abuse, the cover-ups, all of that. It's sometimes hard to fit your mind around the magnitude of this. But there are good priests, there are holy priests, there are wise priests, and quite frankly, they are being they're really up against it right now. Can you imagine being a priest today? And I believe, priests should wear their collars in public and wherever they go all the time, unless, if it's a day off and they're going, skiing or something. I don't know. But under normal circumstances, and just imagine some of the looks that they might get, some of the comments, some of the ways that people might view or perceive them. So, yeah, we really, really do need to be praying for our clergy. And I as I said before, and John echoed it, we're seeing very, very good things. I mean, I've run Vocation Boom, my ministry Vocation Boom, for 10 years. And I can honestly say without one tiny bit of hesitation, the corner has been turned. And I will tell you, I still see people, I see it on social media, I hear people talking about the poor quality of men that are coming out of seminaries today, that they're feminized and they're watered down and they're wishy-washy and all this stuff. There may still be pockets of that, but it really makes my blood boil when I hear that thing painted with a broad brush, because I have met these men, and God is calling the best of the best right now. These men are articulate, They're good looking. They can have any girl they want, but they have chosen to give God, the first opportunity at their lives. They are eloquent. They're educated. They're holy. They're prayerful. They're joyful. They're all of these things. So many of these men that I'm meeting. And the numbers are up, and it's not just a numbers game. I think Satan once said to St. John Vianney, if there were 4 more priests like you, I would be done in. Okay, so it's it doesn't come down to a numbers game all the time. But numbers are important. Let's face it, we have parish closings, parishes that are merging. We have priests who are working their fingers to the bone and their feet to the bone, covering 1, 2, 3 parishes, a hospital, a school, things like that. So yes, we need numbers, but the quality is more important. And I can tell you, I want you to, if you take nothing away from today's Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, please understand that the future of the priesthood in this country, and I believe around the world, is very, very bright. We're seeing it in places like Asia and Africa right now, where they're booming. They have so many vocations, they can't accept them all. And so good things are happening. And I think God, as John said, God pours out his grace for such a time as this. So this is Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Feel free to join in on the conversation today.
Bishop Robert Barron.
Just as Fulton Sheen used radio and TV in the last century, we need to continue to use Catholic radio to announce the Catholic faith in the public forum.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
I'm Jerry Usher.
And I'm Debbie Georgianni. We want to tell you about the Inspired by Faith Book Club.
Join us as we gather together and read a featured inspirational book each month and engage in meaningful discussions together.
Want to participate? The details are simple and can be found at jerryanddebbie.com by clicking on the Book Club tab.
Invite your friends and let's spend some quality time in fellowship with the Inspired by Faith Book Club at jerryanddebbie.com.
It's time for Family Man with Dr. Gregory Popchak.
Want to be more successful? Be humble. A study at Duke University found that successful people tend to exhibit more humility than less successful people in the same field. Being humble doesn't mean beating up on yourself or denying real gifts or talents. That's self-deprecation, which is neither a strength nor a virtue. Exercising true humility, in both the theological and psychological sense, means being willing to see that you don't have all the answers and you can learn a lot from listening to the people around you. Researchers found that humble people did a better job of adapting to new circumstances and soliciting support from others, both of which contributed to the increased success of more humble participants in the study. Jesus said that the meek will inherit the earth. Well, science and the Bible agree. Let humility be the secret of your success. I'm Dr. Greg Popchak, but you can call me Family Man.
To discover more ways faith can enrich your life, visit CatholicCounselors.com.
Hi, this is Janet Williams. You don't have to be a woman to enjoy Women of Grace tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern here on EWTN Radio. Now, back to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and the show team. Rich Jesse, our producer, is on the controls today. Ryan Penny is screening your calls. Jeff Burson is monitoring social media today. There are some comments there on social media that I'll get to in just a minute. But I'm asking this. Debbie suggested this since she had to be off the program today, and the fact that I spent 6 years in formation for the priesthood and discerned out, which wasn't easy, by the way. It's a very traumatic thing. You have all these thoughts about, one day I'm going to be able to say Mass for my family and my friends, and it's going to be, all these very joyful moments, and I'm sure there are for those who become priests or those who become religious. They get to celebrate their vocation with family and friends. But, when you eat and sleep and breathe something for a number of years, it just becomes a part of you, and it became clear to me that God was leading me in a different direction, and I believe that decision has unfolded as I got back into radio. I've been in radio before, but I got back into radio this time in Catholic radio, so I think that the past 20 years or so have pretty much borne out that discernment in my own life. But it's not always an easy decision. But we're asking if any of you listening, maybe you never went officially to a seminary or a convent or a monastery, but if you talked about it, thought about it, prayed about a religious vocation at some point in your life, and as I said at the start of the show, I believe every one of us has an obligation before God to at least ask that question: God, what is it that you made me to be? And when we ask that question, we make ourselves the freest we can possibly be, because then God has the freedom to direct us where we are going to be most happy and most joyful and most fulfilled. So if you fit that description, someone who thought about a priestly or religious vocation, let us know the dynamics of how that went, and if you discerned out why, if you're comfortable doing that, how that went with family and friends for you. I know my family said, "Oh, well, we all support whatever you do." I know my mom was so looking forward to my being a priest, though, because she had a brother who was a priest. The number is 833-288-3986. 833-288-3986. Here's something else too. By the way, if you want to call in and share this, we just celebrated Veterans Day yesterday, when we rightly honor the men and women who have made great sacrifices for our country. Shouldn't we do likewise for those who leave everything behind to serve us as priests, brothers, and sisters? So I'll be happy to give you a global microphone right now. If you want to give a shout out to any priest or religious brother or sister, or just to the priesthood or religious life in general, they can use the encouragement. What would you say right now, during these times that we live in right now, when it's always countercultural and unfashionable to give up marriage? Oh my goodness, you can't get married, you can't have kids. The world just doesn't understand the sublime call to priesthood and religious life. So it's never really popular. But in the days that we're living in right now, it can be even more and more challenging for young people to cut through all the noise and the junk that's out there and hear that call in the first place, and then have the courage to maybe buck their peers and maybe even sometimes go against their family members' wishes and answer that call. So when you call this show, you've got a global microphone. What would you say to our priests and religious today, just to kind of give them a shot in the arm, a little bit of inspiration? 833-288-3986. And we'll get to our next caller, who is Suzanne, here in just a moment. But I mentioned social media is coming in. Timoteo, our good friend Timoteo, says, even my fiance asked me why I do not become a deacon. Then we learned if I did, we could not get married. That is correct. Married men can become deacons, but if a man, in the Latin rite anyway, if a man becomes a deacon, then I understand he cannot get married. Tony in Texas said, went to the seminary to become a foreign missionary, but they didn't let divorced people do that. Maybe you could say what results came from your time in seminary related to Vocation, Boom, and Catholic Answers Live. Well, I that would take a long time, Tony, to talk about that. I just touched upon it a few minutes ago. I think, my time in formation, I got my undergraduate degree in philosophy and theology, 2 years of graduate studies in the seminary, a year as a pastoral intern in a parish, a summer in Mexico studying Spanish, a summer of what they call CPE, clinical pastoral education, in a hospital. I'm now a volunteer chaplain's assistant at a hospital. So, you see, I don't want to talk about myself, but I'm saying for anyone who's listening, who's still maybe a potential candidate for priesthood or religious life, even if that doesn't work out, look how God is going to put all those puzzle pieces together to help you be the best person that He calls you to be in your life. So, give that some serious thought, and parents, please be open to that for your kids. Okay. Got a lot of calls to get to here. Suzanne in Abilene, Texas, is listening on Guadalupe Radio Network. Hi, Suzanne. Welcome to our conversation.
Hi. I wanted to piggyback on something that you said. I will say very, very briefly that, yes, when I discovered Catholicism, I did consider for several years a vocation, and I had even selected a community that I was very interested in. Unfortunately, when I went to tell my mother that, number one, I wanted to convert and that I was interested in becoming a nun, she was none too happy. And many times I have thought that I should have, or I wonder, not that I should have, I wonder if I had pursued that, what would have happened. And it's interesting, I was a closet Catholic for 20 years. When I did finally become a Catholic, my mother was like, what took you so long? But anyway, what I'm really calling about is that we need to be praying for vocations. There is a shortage not only in the Catholic Church, but in all churches. And I think in large measure it's because so many of our priests are so busy and stretched so thin that young people don't have the opportunity to develop a relationship with a priest or a brother or a nun. In fact, in most churches now, there aren't even nuns around for them to develop a relationship with. And I want to say that the Diocese of Fort Worth, Texas, has had a very successful program of having the entire parish at every Mass, every day of the week, pray for vocations, and the outpouring of young men answering that call. And I think it's because when the congregation prays publicly, it's saying, we support this, we believe in this, this is important. And it gives young people the courage to answer that call. And so if your parish, if your diocese is not actively doing that, talk to your priest about, hey, let's find out what, for instance, I know of this one program, the Diocese of Fort Worth, Texas, find out what they did, and let's do a trial program. Let's send up a balloon, and let's see what happens, because our children need to know that this is as valid as becoming a doctor, a teacher, a mechanic, whatever, that we think this is worthy. And then if there's any way that you could introduce your children to someone who has answered the call of God so that they can get to know them, see them outside of only the Mass, that they are human beings, they enjoy their life, they go grocery shopping or whatever, because we don't have the luxury of the old days where families were big and half the families became brothers, sisters, priests. We're going to have to, as parents, the domestic church, go out of our way to try to help them in seeing that this is a valid choice. And so I'm just throwing that out. Pray for vocations, and I'll get off the line because I'm sure there are other people that want to talk.
Well, thank you, Suzanne, so much. And you raise so many good points. One that I just want to focus on for just a second is what I guess it used to be kind of called a feeder system. You'd have I'll just talk about boys for a second. You can talk about girls the same way, but boys, there would be priests in the schools. They would serve at the altar. They would get to know the priest, like you said, have a relationship with them. The priest would do very masculine things with them, take them camping, hiking, chopping wood, things like this. Now, unfortunately, our priests, God bless them, they're just run ragged sometimes. And the same thing with young girls. Go ahead, Suzanne.
You're right. They're so many priests now are having to serve 100 different roles. They don't have the luxury of time of just like walking around on Sunday mornings and visiting in the different classes and introducing themselves. They're busy. They may have another parish they have to go to. I think we can overcome whatever scandals there are if we as a community will say to our children, this is valuable, this is important. And I'll give you a non-Catholic example. In the Lutheran Church, they see teaching as important as the priesthood. Therefore, in Lutheran schools, there are many male teachers, which I think should be in all schools. Our children do not need to have only women teaching them throughout their education. But it's because it's valuable to that community. They talk about it. They see it. We need to show our children in our parishes that becoming a priest, a brother, a nun is valuable, and that we support it, and we talk about it. And one of the most beautiful ways to talk about it is to pray for it. Because if we're praying as a church every Sunday, every time we have Mass, it's planting that seed. Every time we come for Eucharist, this is valuable. This is important. Do not be embarrassed if you hear the call of God, because we as a community support it.
Amen. Suzanne, beautiful, beautiful comments. Thank you so much for your call, and I could spend the rest of the show just following up on so many of the things that you said, but thank you for joining us. We appreciate that. Just with regard to the community, dear friends, just think about this for a minute. What is the Mass? The Mass is the representation of Jesus' sacrifice on Calvary, without which we have no salvation. Jesus Christ, Him alone, died for our salvation and for the removal of our sins. The Mass is the representation of that. It's the application of Calvary in our lives, and only a validly ordained priest can offer that sacrifice. Now you tell me, why would we not beg God for priests every day? Why would we not be on our hands and knees saying, Lord, please bring us priests? Only a priest. I sometimes imagine that a priest up on the altar, during the course of Mass, it must overcome him sometimes so overwhelmingly that he just pauses and looks back and forth from one hand to the other and says, these hands are the very hands that call down the second person of the Blessed Trinity onto the altar in the Eucharist. And these hands with the words of absolution, are the instruments that God uses to pull souls out of hell. Folks, this is very real. It's very sublime stuff. No profession, no job, no vocation on earth can compare to that. And this is not to leave out the importance of the women religious. I've shared on this show before. When I have a need, in fact, I have convents of nuns praying for me every day. I make sure that I do that. But when I have a very serious and important need, who do I go to first? Sorry, priests, it's not you, it's the sisters, it's the brides of Christ. What is Jesus going to refuse to one of his brides who has given up everything to follow their divine Lamb and serve him as a religious sister, and brothers too as well? So Suzanne, thank you so much. As I think everyone can see, this is a passionate topic for me, but a lot of you have other things to say, so I want to get back to more of your phone calls on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, talking about the priesthood or religious life. In particular, if you spent time discerning that in your own life and you want to share about that, if you have a son or a daughter who did or who is right now, 833-288-3986. Thank you again, Suzanne. Gloria in Dallas, Texas, also listening on Guadalupe Radio Network. Hi, Gloria. Welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Hi, this is my first time ever calling into a show like this, and I'm very nervous, so I hope I say what I want to say.
I'm sure you will.
Properly. My husband and I have 3 kids, and they're all grown. The youngest is actually a senior in high school now, but our second child just professed her first vows with Sisters of Life in New York, and the reason for my call is just to describe from a mother's point of view what happens. We knew our daughter was very special because in her last year of high school, she was already delving much deeper into her faith. My husband and I were raised very Catholic, but when I say very Catholic, we thought we were very Catholic because we went to Mass every Sunday, every holy day of obligation. We said grace before meals, and the kids all went through their sacraments. But that was it. We were not saying the rosary more than 2 or 3 times a year as a family. We didn't even know what the Divine Mercy Chaplet was. But we thought we were really good Catholics. Through our daughter, we now are becoming much better Catholics. So we actually owe that to her. But on top of that, the reason for the call is that when she expressed her desire to leave college, she had finished her first semester at a very well-known university on full scholarship. She was also captain of the cheerleaders and on a ballroom dancing team. I mean, this girl was athletic. She still is. What I mean to say is, I wanted to understand what she was telling me, that she wanted to leave college to discern her vocation and travel to different come-and-sees at different convents. But instead, that Christmas, when she told me this, you could have thought I was told that she was pregnant by some drug-addicted guy. I mean, I was completely floored. And I started telling some of our immediate family. Unfortunately, we have a family where many are fallen away Catholics. I had cousins, I had in-laws telling me, you have to stop her. How can you let her throw her brains away? How can you let her throw all that beauty? And, how amazing she is. You can't let her do this. Everybody in the family, it seemed, except for a few, were pretty much telling me and my husband, you have to stop your daughter. And at this point, I was on an emotional roller coaster because I could see the beauty of God calling her. I could see it was sincere. As parents, we requested, and she obeyed, to complete your education because you did take a seat of somebody else that could have gotten the scholarship. And she obeyed, and she did it joyfully She continued to discern. She had the most wonderful support at her university from the Catholic campus priest that was there. He was her spiritual advisor. She had other very good and faithful Catholics that were around her in community that would help her discern, and she went to a few retreats. When she finally graduated college, then she did, in fact, go and become a postulant. And everything from there worked out. The thing I regret most in my heart is that I could not be one of the people that truly supported her. And I know that hurt her and that broke her heart. But there were times I would be very, very supportive, and then other times I'd say, why is she choosing a life away from us? She's choosing never to get married and have kids, where my vision, my selfish vision, was that I was going to buy her kids back-to-school clothes. I'd watch my grandchildren in plays, and I'd have a son-in-law that my husband would get along with. We had this crazy selfish vision, but that's not what God had in mind. And now we are so at peace. We are so excited and joyful for her. We praise God for our daughter. We don't know how we were lucky enough to be her parents, but she has actually now led us to become much more faithful Catholics. I just regret that there was no support community for the parents of those that are discerning vocation, because I never did find other parents that could understand where I was coming from. But it is a struggle, this world's view versus the Catholic Christian view. That's all.
Well, that's all. My goodness, Gloria. Let me just say something right away. Your nervousness quickly gave way to your beautiful, beautiful voice for your daughter's vocation and your passion for what God has done in her life. And I'll just say a couple of things. I think just like she may have heard the call to religious life apart from you, your family, any that support that you talked about, the Holy Spirit, her guardian angel, her formation in that vocation, if that is God's will, and even if it's not, she's getting great formation. She'll come to understand your hesitation to support her. And now it sounds like, she couldn't have a bigger supporter. So, all things come around. So I hope you have peace of mind about that. And, I love the fact that you said, you challenged her to continue her education because she had taken a scholarship that could have gone to somebody else. You know what? God saw that coming as well, and God took a step back and said, okay, we'll wait for you to finish your education. Okay, now it's time. So it's just very, very beautiful. And, the fact that friends sometimes don't understand. I actually had a former girlfriend, when she found out I was going into priestly formation, she said, oh, what a waste. What a waste. And I've heard priests say that before, people have called them, Father, what a waste, and I think that just betrays a complete and utter lack of understanding. And this former girlfriend of mine was Catholic too. I don't know how solidly a Catholic, but anyway, Gloria, anything else you want to add? I mean, if you want to give us your daughter's either her first name or maybe she has a religious name now, we like to keep names in our book of prayers.
Yeah, Sister Juliana Faustina with Sisters of Life.
Beautiful.
And
Juliana
all I can say is through. Did you get all that?
Yeah, Sister Juliana Faustina. Yeah.
Yep, she just professed vows. She's 24 years old now, and it's a 3-year process to get to those first vows. And at any time, they can discern out. So, it's for parents that are listening to this that have a daughter with a possible vocation, please know they're not going into something where they're going to be brainwashed and chained to a chair and not left to leave. I mean, there are people actually worried about that, in our family. The Lord will bring your son or daughter to where they need to be. You just need to have the faith in God to let go of the reins and let God work and the Holy Spirit work in your child. It's a difficult thing to do.
It is. It has to be for a parent. But just as the man or woman who gives God that freedom in their lives is totally free, so are you, Gloria. Now I know you realize that as a parent. So thank you for sharing that. And our prayers go every day with Sister Juliana Faustina and her community, the Sisters of Life. What a great, great community they are. Thank you, Gloria, for sharing that with us. Mike is up next, and Mike is in Reno, Nevada. I love Reno, Mike. He's a first-time caller listening on Sirius XM 130. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Jerry.
Thank
you for taking my call.
Sure, anytime.
Good. Just wanted to say, right now, particularly with Veterans Day just passed, it's a very popular thing to thank a veteran for their service. And I'm career military, and so every time I get a chance and talk to a priest or leaving Mass, whether they thank me for my service or not, I always thank them for their service.
Well, yeah, I do the same thing too, Mike. Even if I don't know the priest, I will I literally say, thank you, Father, for your vocation. And sometimes they'll look at me kind of like, well, yeah, of course, but they may be well settled into that role, I guess is what I'm saying. But for those of us, and it sounds like you share this with me, and I'm sure so many of our listeners, Mike, you never ever take for granted what the priests bring us and do for us in our lives. Is that fair to say? Well, Mike, I want to thank you too. By the way, just not really just a day late from Veterans Day, but Debbie and I always make a point on this show when we hear from anybody who is active or retired military. We always thank you, and I know the Take Two family shares that gratitude to you, Mike, because we live in ever increasingly difficult times, and yet we still enjoy many freedoms that people around the world have never had. So, thank you, sir, for your service to our country, and thank you for listening and calling the program. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Going to get over to Lisa in Lawton, Oklahoma, listening on Oklahoma Catholic Radio, and now also a first-time caller. Hi, Lisa. Welcome.
Hello, Jerry. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure. We have about 2 minutes for you, Lisa.
Okay. Just to sum up, I was a nun for 4 years. I left the monastery, and I was discerning again. I wanted to either go to the Visitation or go to the Carmelites. I was leaning towards the Carmelites because I felt, and I still feel, that in my heart I'm a Carmelite. But unfortunately, I met this man, and we started dating, and he kind of threw a monkey wrench into my vocation plans. And he was an atheist when we met, and I thought that maybe, okay, so this is another soul for God that I have to catch, like a fish. But God said, no, but it's like, I married this guy, we not even divorced, we split up in 2012, and because we're not divorced, I can't get a divorce, I can't get an annulment, I can't go to the Carmelites. So I'm regretting my decision to get married, which probably is not a good thing, but that's just how I feel. I mean, I want to become a third order Carmelite, and I'm working towards that, but I don't know. I guess it's just as good, whatever God wants me to do.
Yeah, for sure, Lisa. And I was going to mention that too. A lot of people, not just those who have spent time in priestly or religious formation, have become what they call third order members of a particular religious congregation or oblates or what have you. And basically, I don't understand that fully, but the way I understand it is it's a lay person who sort of lives by the same rule that the community does and follows their routine of prayer throughout the day, maybe not quite as rigorously. I mean, I know some religious communities that are up about every 3 hours, literally praying throughout the day and the night. That would be difficult for some lay people. But yeah, I encourage anyone who's listening to think about becoming a third order, a member of a congregation or an oblate. And that really helps to kind of stabilize your prayer life and your life overall in general. So Lisa, thank you for sharing that call. We're going to pray for your ongoing discernment, whatever that may be. And Mary and Steve, I'm sorry we're not going to be able to get to you today. What a fascinating conversation. Vicky says, my husband who has passed on spent 10 years in the seminary. This is on Facebook. He started in high school seminary in Miami. He just knew he wanted to be a park service ranger. I met him about 10 years later in the choir loft at church. He was a good Catholic man of God, loved the church, fourth degree knight. His upbringing and seminary had a lot to do to make him the awesome husband that he was. Vicky, thank you for sharing that with us. That is so important. All right, Debbie ought to be back with us tomorrow. Pray for her safe travel. There's some snow and weather in some parts of the country where she's off to, but thank you so much for making this really impactful conversation. On behalf of the entire show team, I'm Jerry Usher, wishing you a beautiful and blessed day. We'll talk tomorrow.
Dr. Ray Guarendi, making a commitment to the wives. When the show's on, put the radio under your husband's pillow. The percentage of yes dears will rise. The doctor is in next.
For many families, another year of floods, fires, and devastation have left them on a long journey towards healing and recovery. This Christmas season, the Knights of Columbus invite you to help victims of natural disasters rebuild their homes and communities